This is Mommying While Muslim, recorded live and unedited. Watch as Zeba and Uzma record their podcast, see their reactions, and find out for yourself what all the buzz is about.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mommyingwhilemuslim podcast. This is Uzma Joffrey.
This is Seba Hassan. How are you, Uzma? How is everything going? We didn't get to see you on Friday. How is Rania
Yes,
today?
Rania is good. We just got some good news this morning. It looks like she's only going to need chemo for one more cycle, inshallah. So we're going to pray that her numbers
Inshallah.
continue to come down. It's working. The numbers that we're
Good.
looking for are coming down, and we are really just treating numbers because clinically she looks amazing, alhamdulillah.
Okay,
So I'm really
alhamdulillah.
happy about that. And that was like 7:30 this morning. I was like, man, you set up my day. Like, I love it. So super excited. How was your week?
You know, we got back from the beach in our nice, relaxing time, and essentially was thrown into the throes of virtual homeschool, virtual classroom, and virtual homeschooling. And thank goodness we kind of set up a little bit ahead of time. I was able to do that with some advice from Samia Masuda, who came on the show, my chai chat. She gave me some really good advice about setting up the classroom and doing all that ahead of time, which was really, really helpful considering, of course, we had lots of snafus that come, and you know what, we're all handling it in stride. And Zaid, my number 3, gave me the best compliment today and said I'm one of the best teachers he's ever had, and so perhaps whatever is going on is working. So alhamdulillah.
Yeah, paying him under the table. Is that what you're doing?
Exactly. Like, you can have your candy later. No, trust me,
Yes.
we're cutting out sugar in our household right now because otherwise everybody would be bouncing off the walls. So we're on day 5 of that. So far, so good. Headaches officially stopped this morning. Yay. So I'm so
Alhamdulillah.
thankful.
That's amazing. Good for you.
So I'm really, really thankful. Now we're kind of over the hump, and we're taking every day as it comes, and feeling blessed that we have the support system to do that, and very, very much
Alhamdulillah.
appreciative. So what about you? How was your
Yeah.
week, my dearest?
My sister's visiting. She
Oh,
organized
yes.
my kitchen, my pantry. I feel like I can breathe in there now. And she did all my
Thank
hijabs.
the
So you
Lord.
notice how I'm not
I
monochromatic today?
did. I was like, so cute. I definitely noticed a little bit of a sassy
Yes.
change in you. My goodness.
That is thanks to my sister, alhamdulillah. So yes, may Allah bless her and reward her. She loves to organize. She's like you.
Yes.
Me, I was just living in a
Manifesting.
state of perpetual frozen fear because I didn't know where to start. So she did it for me. It was great.
Oh my goodness. So I love it, and I'm excited to see the different hijabs that you're going to pull out in the upcoming week. So tell your sister thank you from
Yeah,
me.
absolutely. I posted on Instagram, on my personal Instagram, like pictures of what she did
Oh,
and the
I have to
drawers and what
see
they look
it.
like. It's actually pretty cool. Pretty,
I
pretty cool.
cannot wait. I cannot wait to see that. But what is our soapbox for today, Uzma? I'm so excited you're here to do the soapbox because it's definitely not up my alley. So you
So our
go right
soapbox for
ahead.
today. Yes, absolutely. So at the time of this recording, it is September 11th. This is the day none of us will ever forget because it changed our lives and inadvertently changed the lives of our families and our children going forward, how we mother. This was not something that we considered when it happened because we were in college at the time. But of course, the world is so different from what we grew up in. So I wanted to, unfortunately, I don't want you to go look up this person unless you really just want to fact check me, but I don't want her to get a platform. But Marjorie Greene is a candidate running for the House of Representatives in the state of Georgia. And she recently posted a picture, I believe a week ago on September 8th, of her with a giant assault rifle and a picture of the squad, which, as you know, are, all
Mhm.
women, congresswomen who have gotten a lot of attention, negative attention from the media and our government for being very outspoken, proud women in government who are ready to shake things up. Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and I'm totally blanking on the fourth one. AOC. Yeah, my favorite. Hello. And this picture is a threatening picture because she's saying she's ready to take them out. And there's been zero comments from the GOP, the party. Obviously, I'm not going to say that. She's running on a particular party ticket, and there has been zero censure of what she's doing. And in fact, there has been applause for posting that kind of a threatening picture with our governing officers, people that we are paying to run our government. So today Marjorie Greene tweeted, 19 years ago, 19 men killed 2,977 Americans. And then she goes on to talk about how this tragedy united our country. And in many ways, I will agree that it did. But we posted today on Instagram and Facebook at Mommyingwhilemuslim about what it means to us and what we feel happened as a result of 9/11, where we became the face of all of Islam, and we had to apologize for something that we didn't do. It's something that our kids still feel like they have to apologize for, and that's not fair. So I wanted on our soapbox today, this 2,977 Americans that died. Well, let's just go back to 2014, not far ago. So since 2014, in the last 6 years alone, 11,314 Americans, so about 4 times as many Americans have died just from mass shootings, killed or injured. I take that back. There is one nonprofit that studies gun shootings, but the Congressional Research Committee on Gun Violence, because of course, their wings have been clipped. They're not actually allowed to study gun violence in America because we have very powerful lobbies preventing that from happening. They limit their studies to actual Americans who were killed, not the survivors who may have been injured, some with permanent damages, right? So this number, over 11,000 Americans have been killed or injured just by mass shootings, and there have been 50 U.S. soil on U.S. American deaths on U.S. soil, 50 something. I think it's like 54 that are terrorist related. So where are we putting our money? Where are we putting our dollars to say we're protecting Americans? We're sending it overseas to kill like 54, the result of, or the cause of death for 54 some odd Americans, rather than looking at our own soil and looking at what's happening here and who's actually killing 11,000 Americans just in the last 6 years from gun violence. And mass shootings, by the way, are when 4 or more people are killed. So it's not a lot to qualify, but that low qualifier puts us in this number, and it just makes you realize how much we have to study and how people are banking on this national tragedy to target and terrorize an entire group of people, a minority of Americans. You and I have felt this, you and I have seen this. And so I just want to say again, alluding to our post today, I know some people may find it offensive, and that's okay. We post those things up to incite discussions. And if white Americans are not going to apologize for slavery, and if they're not going to apologize for the systemic racism in this country, then Muslims are done apologizing for 9/11 that we had nothing to do with, and that we are actually still victimized for. So that's my soapbox for today.
That is quite the soapbox, my dear.
Well, I hope it was good.
It was great. We have like a virtual like mic drop after that. So I definitely appreciate your insight. But the truth of the matter is that is one of the main reasons why we did start Mommyingwhilemuslim, is to kind of hit these types of issues from the head on, put a face to a name, make it personalized, because I think in doing that, we can kind of cultivate conversation and maybe kind of help move us forward towards a more peaceful progression. That is at least always my hopes and my prayers for all of this, because it has been a pretty tough close to 2 decades. So I definitely appreciate that soapbox today, Uzma. But we are very excited to continue the month on having American Muslim female scholars join us to talk about the role of women and Islam from the mouths of these female scholars directly. Joining us today is Anse Dr. Tamara Gray, founder and executive director of Rabata, an organization dedicated to promoting positive cultural change through creative educational experiences. She holds so so many degrees. I'm just going to name a couple of them. Doctorate in leadership, master's degree in curriculum theory and instruction. She spent over 20 years studying traditional and classical Islamic sciences, Quran and Arabic in Damascus and Syria. She's worked in the field of education for 25 years before founding Rabata, and as an author of one of my favorite books, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later today, which you can also find on her she has a podcast called Joy Jots. Her bio is just way too long. And she is so accomplished, and we're so grateful to have her grace our platform today. But the one thing that I wanted to say, it's a narrative story of Rabata, which really speaks to us here specifically. And I'm going to read it directly. Bismillah. Muslim women historically have been a vital part of the foundation of Islamic scholarship, leadership, and community care. Today, Rabata provides a platform for the rising tide of Muslim women becoming scholars, community leaders, and positive cultural change agents. Through online classes, literature, and spiritual mentorship, women are finding hope once again. Muslim women are raising their voices and amplifying their power across 6 continents as they live in the shelter of one another and uplift ourselves and the next generation. And we have 2 beautiful young ladies that are our personal daughters that we want to lift to that next generation, inshallah. Mm-hmm. And each woman brings with her a unique ability to be the needed change through education, tarbiyah, and community. And we are so excited to have on the podcast today Anse Tamara. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. And I'm so excited to be here.
We really appreciate it because you're one of the few guests that came on early and was ready, because as a podcaster, you have all the equipment and you know how to do this.
Yes,
so this is really fun for us. You're like, yes.
So fun for us.
Yeah, sound check was a breeze.
Yeah. My father, oh, sorry. I was just going to talk about
being on time. Go ahead.
My father is the kind of man who, if you're at 5 minutes to the hour, so if the appointment's at 10 a.m., at 9:55, if you're not there, he's calling you and saying, where are you? Why are you late?
You're late already. We need to take a page out of his book, honestly. Yeah. A lot of times our streams go a little bit late just because the tech can take, it's taken an hour and 15 minutes sometimes just to get the tech straight. So we really appreciate today, like, alhamdulillah. We appreciate all of our guests, but in particular, those who already know what they're doing. It's like, I got this. So Anse Tamara, we start our guests usually by asking about their mom story. If you're comfortable telling us a little bit about your kids and what is your momming philosophy?
Yeah, my baby is 23.
Oh.
So, my children are all adults, and my children are adults. My eldest is 30. My goodness, I should have done all the math before coming on.
I feel so validated right now because I can't remember my kids' birthdays. This is great.
I got their birthdays. I got to do the math. She's 32, and then the next one is 29, and then the baby is 23. And I have grandchildren, so I think more about what is my grandmothering philosophy these days than I do what is my parenting philosophy. But I will say, I'll throw out something here. When I was a young mother, and I had one of my children who will remain somewhat anonymous, one of the 3, gave me a really hard time. Like, it was really tough raising that particular child. And I went to a friend of mine who had already adult children, and I said, what did you do? How did you do this?
Yes.
And I expected she was a very religious woman, mashallah. And I don't know if I should say friend of mine. She was my elder. I should say my elder. And I expected a long, قال الله قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم response. And what she said was, she looked at me and she said, always be on his side.
Yes.
But that's what she said. And she repeated that a few times and tried to help me understand that, that is what she meant. Always be on his side. And that has been a great help going forward. I wished that I had that piece of advice earlier on. I think as parents, we often think that we're on the side of upbringing as opposed to on the child's side. And I think
Yes.
really once we learn and understand that perspective, we become better parents.
Okay. My list is getting more concise. Every time we go to somebody who's a more experienced parent than we are, like, so I've had don't yell, don't yell, don't yell. Like everybody's been
Yes.
saying that to me. So this is the first time I've heard be on their side. This is something that I'm going to
Mhm.
have to research and practice because I'm going to guess, and I'm again not to unanonymize this particular child of yours, but I'm gonna guess it's your number two because that's the one.
Nope, nope,
Okay,
nope.
good.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes people are like, that second one is just subhanAllah, that's a trial for me. So, okay, I'm going to have to work on this. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's
So,
really an interesting way of thinking because you have to think about, okay, I still need to be a parent and discipline, but I need to do this from that different perspective. And it especially matters when you're thinking about the outside world. And I think in the Muslim community, we're particularly sensitive to what are people going to think. And so when I
Yes.
do things that frustrate us or make us angry, we have a tendency to be on the side of our reputation instead of on
Mhm.
the child's side. And we really have to think about that. And I have a million examples I could give you, but I won't use the time for that.
Oh my,
yeah,
we're
no,
gonna
I
have to
really
set up
appreciate
another
that.
podcast just for that because that
No,
is
I want to set up a
exactly
counseling
what
call.
we exactly. Can you please help us? No, because I 100%, I love what you just said, because I think a lot of people do feel that, but at some point they get to a stage where your job as a parent is not done, but you're more in the periphery or in the background. So at that point, they need your emotional support more than anything else. And that becomes, I think that's a little bit harder because we're so used to being that number one, the person that if you give them a kiss, they feel better. But at some stage, that doesn't help. So being their advocate and being on their side, I think definitely cultivates a longer term relationship. So I very much appreciate that very specific piece of advice because I do think people, it gets lost in translation 120%.
Absolutely. And, what would people say? I think those are the ugliest words in our language. So I'm glad you called that out too today, Anse Tamara. So, would you mind telling us a little bit about your personal family background? Where are you from? You shared a few, I think, really important pieces of your history with us before we started recording, but we would really like our audience to hear that. I know we've read about it, we've heard it on your podcast on Joy Jots, but I would really like for you to share that experience with Mommyingwhilemuslim.
Sure. I'm originally from Minnesota, the land that everyone thinks is freezing, but actually it's the best place to live. And I love Minnesota. I'm a definite Minnesota advocate. And I'm originally from Minnesota. I became a Muslim in 1985. I got married in 1986. I had two children while living in the United States, and my third was born in Damascus. That's where we moved when I had finished my master's degree and my husband finished his doctorate. We moved back to Damascus, where his father was from. And I say that as though I sort of, dutifully followed him there. But the truth is that I forced him to go there. I was the one who wanted to move to Damascus, and I wanted to move there because
Yes.
in the 1980s, the opportunity for learning for women in the United States, I
Mhm.
probably women actually, around Islamic theology and law was nearly nil. And, or at least anything that was here, I had suspected feelings around its foundational thinking. We'll just say that. And so I was very blessed and I was able to move to Damascus. I loved it there, had no intention of leaving. In 2012, the war pushed me out. I came to the United States in 2012 thinking I was coming for a 5-month break from the war and from the stress of that war. And after, I mean, it took me a while. From 5 months, I said, okay, I'll be here for a year. And now it's 7. So mashallah, alhamdulillah. But during that time of coming here, I mean, yeah, that's my basic story of how I am here, where I am right now. So that's another
Yeah, I
podcast
love that.
that
Yeah,
interact.
totally. I felt so bad. Like every time I hear you talk about Syria with such nostalgia and so
Mhm.
much longing, it breaks my heart because I think all of us thought it's just something temporary. It took us a while to register that this is something real that's happening. And now, for some people it's become their life's work to try to help the Syrian refugees and such. So, I really feel for you and for any family members that you left behind, and certainly the sisterhood that you left behind. I know you long so much for that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about growing older is that you develop relationships and friends and a community and a way of living. And so certainly that has been one of the griefs that I've had to deal with. And I don't talk about it because I want people to feel sorry for me, but because I think it's good to recognize that as we have life changes, there are different things we grieve. And one of them is, or can be, in this kind of a move, the sort of loss of a community that you were relying upon. It. And that included my work community too. I mean, it included a lot of different layers. But yeah, alhamdulillah, Allah's plan is always the best of plans. And I'm grateful for new community. I'm grateful for opportunity to work and to share the things that I learned while I was there. One of my teachers said to me early on, sort of teasing, but also serious. It was a little bit of a combination of both. It was,
Mhm.
I'll never forgive you if you um, don't bring forward what I'm teaching you now. So, this isn't just
Oh,
something you're going to put in a box and hold on to. This is something that I want you to share with the world. And so that's important. I mean, it's an important part of our tradition that we don't learn just to benefit ourselves. We learn to benefit ourselves and become better so we can make a better world that we live in.
pay it forward. Absolutely. I love that.
No, I definitely agree with that. And do you feel that that actually translates specifically to your parenting philosophy or how you parented? And now as a grandma, do you want to be called grandma, glamma, because you're gorgeous too? So like,
Mashallah.
what do they call you?
No, no. Well, my
Nani?
granddaughter, Tete, which is the
Tita.
Arabic for grandma, but I'm
Tita.
perfectly happy with all of the things that underline my age. I certainly don't want to be a whatever. What did you say? Glam?
Glamma.
No,
That's the new term. I read that the other day. I was like, glamma. I'm in my
no.
pajamas 99% of the time, so that's definitely not going to happen to me. But like, is that part of your like in order to you learn to make the world a better place? Was that kind of like the foundation for your parenting journey?
I think I was kind of more of a how am I going to manage today parent. I don't
Okay,
know.
that makes me feel better.
We're going to figure today, I
I
mean,
have to get past dinner.
yeah,
Exactly.
I did a good job in the cooking. I think I will
Oh,
take credit.
alhamdulillah.
But
That is
yeah,
jihad for me, cooking. Oh my gosh.
I like food, so I like to cook. But I think two
Yeah.
things. One, I just want to say a word about this. I never heard this before, glamma. And I think one of my definite parenting philosophies is doing my best to teach my daughters that it's a lie, this worldly push to create women or turn women into uh,
Yes.
sexual
Figures.
figures for all people, and that all of our lives, that's what we want to be. And something like glamour just makes me feel like, oh my god, there's nowhere where we can get away from this.
I know
And
you can't. That's the problem.
well, I have. I mean, I'm not. I
Good.
refuse. I refuse.
Hmm.
And that's when we allow it to affect our self-esteem. That's when it becomes really damaging. And for me, it's been something that I've been very intentional about teaching my daughters and my son that our self-esteem needs to be based on our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our relationships with people, how well we treat them, what kind of a person are we, how are we interacting with others. And of course it's a fight. I'm not saying I was I'm not saying that one individual mother can fight an entire culture, but it's an
Hmm.
important voice. And my mother taught me that. My mother
Hmm.
definitely, it was one of her important messages to me that I am much more than what society is trying to paint me as.
I love it. We're all about breaking the molds, making our own. That's why we started the podcast, because we were like, nobody's doing this and nobody's talking about these issues. Let's just do it ourselves, you know?
That's what, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
So it's okay. It's two moms and their guests kind of fixing the culture or addressing the cultural needs. I want to go back to not necessarily your move to Syria and pursuing Islamic scholarship, but why did it become so important to you? I know you knew at the time that in the 80s there was, a dearth of opportunities for Muslim women to
Mhm.
pursue scholarship, but why was that in particular so important to you?
Well, I mean, if I'm honest, I think one of the reasons it was important to me is I didn't want to lose my faith. I mean, there are more lofty goals that I could talk about, but if I'm really honest, in 1986, 1987, the type of rhetoric that I was hearing around women's role in society supposedly based on Islamic text, the type of rhetoric that I was hearing about Islam itself was really harsh. And not only harsh, it was excluding of me and my sisters, other women. And so, and I didn't believe it. Like I didn't believe that was the Islam that I had converted to, just because and the only reason I didn't believe it then is because I believe very strongly in God. And I felt that I understood, I mean, astaghfirullah for this type of arrogance, but I felt like I understood the sort of, how can I say this in a, I felt that I understood that God's creation of the earth did not include misogyny. So I'll just say it like that.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, and I felt like I was seeing it so many places. So I had really two choices. I could learn more, delve into, deeply delve into Islamic theology and law, or I could walk away and do something else. And I was a real believer. I believed in God and I believed Islam was God's religion on this earth. I believe that because of a spiritual experience, not because of an intellectual conviction. I was a very academic type, of sort of a brainy type. I like to read and study. So I hadn't been able to do a lot of that at my point of conversion. And so facing all of these darkness and ugliness, I felt that that
Mhm.
was how to solve it. Learn more, and I
Mhm.
will be able to get over this sort of this place of ignorance. That's what I'll call it. That I felt I was in, being in this society and place that I was in at the time.
I love
No,
that. I know on,
yeah.
go ahead, Zeba.
No, no, I was going to say that's in learning you grow. So I really definitely appreciate that. But and I know Islamic scholarship is very important to you. So can you kind of speak to how the importance of it to you specifically, and providing the safe spaces for women and women who are specifically new to Islam, and like you're saying, like they're still in that stage where they're actually learning about the religion themselves and trying to apply it to their day to day.
Absolutely. So one of the learnings, I guess, of my own personal research and study is that research tells us that women and girls do better in single sex classrooms and
Mhm.
boys do better in mixed gender or mixed sex.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And so it is no surprise to me that with that research, that mixed gender classrooms are the push everywhere, because generally the types of societies we live in have these Western sort of modern, postmodern societies certainly have leaned towards the advantage towards men. But if we are to understand this and take it at least as a possibility that yes, women do better in single sex classrooms and even universities, if you look at statistics as well, as women coming out of single-sex universities, you find that there's a much higher percentage of those women who become leaders in community, leaders in politics, leaders in
Mm.
business. And the theory is that it's because during a very important part of identity building, which is those 4 years of undergraduate school between about 20 to 18 to 22, they are the leaders because they have to be in a single sex university. It will be the women who are the presidents of all of the organizations. There is no MSA at a women's college where the president of the MSA is a man. It just can't happen. And so in all of these different, but I'm talking about any type of organization in the classroom, who will be the best in class? Who will be speaking up in class? Who will be fill in the blank? It's always going to be a woman. So if it's not you, you're going to see a woman fulfilling or filling that role. And so during that those very important 4 years, you leave 23, 24. Now you have a real image of yourself as, yes, I am a leader. Yes, I can do all of these different kinds of things. And yes, I can fill these roles. And there's no reason for me to think I can't. And so as a result, there are far more of the women graduating from women's universities who are leaders and such, or historically that's been true. Now, that being said, what I have done is taken this learning that I experienced and say to myself, well, how can I best bring it forward? How can I best offer it to others? And I do believe in a by women for women educational setting. It's an opportunity for women to speak. It's an opportunity for women to deal in knowledge production. Knowledge production is a space that historically Muslim women have not been recognized for their contributions. I won't say we haven't contributed, but we haven't really been recognized for our
Mhm.
contributions. And it's time for that to change. And I believe that one way to do that is to encourage one another in that knowledge production. But we can't get to that place until we have been able to really deeply and widely develop our Islamic scholarship, our understanding of theology and law, all of the different sciences of Islam, how it all goes together. And I would add also understanding of modern concepts, modern ideas around social sciences and humanities, and even science itself. These are important things to have at least a level of understanding about in order to contextualize our Islamic learning and be able to talk about it in ways that make sense for other people.
I love that. I understand what you're saying. We do have a question from the audience. I think just to kind of clarify a little bit, if we separate the two genders, how can they interact? Is basically the question. And I
Yeah,
think that this
so
is you've got this.
I think really that we live in a society that isn't going to all of a sudden put up some kind of weird world barrier between men and women, nor would I say that it should. And so I believe that we have plenty of opportunities to interact between men and women, and certainly having women and men, but we're talking about women here today. So women thinking about those interactions in a professional way instead of a
Mhm.
professional way is something that is also an important thing to learn and demonstrate. And so I don't think that we have to worry too much about that. Even if we, let's in the pretend world that we have a whole bunch of women's universities, and that's where most women are going to school, we still have possibilities for interactions and working and studying together for projects, etc. But that's not the way the world is anyway. We don't have a million women's universities. We have very few, and they're becoming less. What I'm providing is one single opportunity in a woman's life to step outside of the pressures of the environment where men are often in power or often just over speaking or stopping opportunities for women to speak, and saying, here's a place that is safe. Come here and talk about all of your issues, talk about your questions, talk about, ask questions, and then learn deeply. And as you can come in and go out of this space, and all of the rest of the world is where we are interacting with men and women and Muslims and non-Muslims, and I don't know, deer. I have deer in my backyard. Like, I mean, whatever it is that we're in the world, we're interacting with them, and we should be interacting with taqwa and ihsan no matter who we are interacting with. But
Yes.
I definitely think that not providing this opportunity for women would be a grave error. And I talked about research. Research informs that decision, but as does my personal experience. And if I may just take a moment to say something else about it, we're in an age where women's friendships have become questionable, where our young
Yes.
girls are being raised in schools and such, where they're made to doubt if their love for their friend is a love for a friend that is natural and healthy and really historically normal, or is it indicating something else? And that's a
Mhm.
point of oppression, really, because women have always had a real important need for friendship and community and women to rely on for emotional support and for emotional uh, counsel and etc. And so it's also a really good opportunity to find friends where you don't have them, to be able to rely on friends and to create that community that is otherwise often missing in our lives. And unfortunately, the new generations coming up even suspect. So we've got other reasons that those relationships aren't happening, from jealousy and silly pettiness in community to really serious social reasons. And so there's a lot to unpack there. But I really think that the time of by women for women education, by women for women uh, projects and programs is critical to our legacy of reestablishing, bringing forth the real healthy Islam of the Prophet ﷺ that he taught us, and establishing it once again for those who will come next, so that it isn't lost to them.
I love all of that. That is amazing. Yeah. Before I ask you about the history of female scholarship, if you're comfortable talking about that, we've kind of alluded in our questioning and your answer about safe spaces for female scholarship. So on that note, can you tell our audience about Rabata?
Oh, I would love to. Just give me a mic, and you just did. Rabata is the organization that in 2012, when I sat down and I said, I was in my house, I was renting a house right next door to my brother in West St. Paul. And I sat there and I was like, what am I was looking for a job. SubhanAllah that I couldn't find one. I mean, I couldn't find a job. And I used to be the one who people would call me and beg me to come and work for them. And it was, so 2012 was this really hard time. And I sat down and thought alone in my house. I thought, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? And at that point, I was also dealing with a lot of grief about Syria. And I said, well, I can't
Mhm.
do anything about Syria. I can't change Syria. I can't do anything about that. But I can take what Syria gave me and share it with other women who can benefit from the great gifts I received. And so our mission is up to promote positive cultural change through creative educational experiences. Everything can be an educational experience. As you're looking at the website, you're seeing all sorts of different things. We work in the field of direct education, or ta'aleem, and we have ribat. I wanted all of our programs to be a derivative of the root verb rabata, but my board said, if you do that, only 3 people in the world will be able to differentiate between the programs. You can't, you can't do that because it'll be too confusing for everyone. So I was
Okay.
voted out. Now we have like Daybreak and all these other names. But Ribat is standing at the forefront, and so we're standing together. That's where we're really learning that Islamic knowledge. And that's where we stand together. And so that's our part of our education. We also have Rabatin, new. Tarbiyah is about spiritual and leadership training. And then community care. We want all women to be community care agents. So all of our projects are within those 3, let's say, umbrellas of work. Thanks for asking.
I love it. Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been researching like what track am I going to do? How can I fit this in my schedule? but it's
You can
just,
do it in
you
your
get so
home.
overwhelmed.
No, no, no. In the Rabat program, we have surgeons, literally, like really, we have cancer surgeons who are taking classes. We have moms of 5 kids, 10 kids. We have moms of lots of
Oh my
children.
gosh.
We have moms who are there are full-time jobs and they're moms. We've got single women. We've got professional, all the different, every walk of life that you can walk through. And Rabat classes are really easy to manage as far as manage them managing them in our lives, because they are synchronous, meaning that you can come to the class and attend it and have a live interaction with your teacher, but they're also recorded. So you miss it, you can come on and watch it on Thursday. You can intend to watch it at a different
Mm.
day and interact
Hmm.
through other ways, like through WhatsApp, or interact through homework or what have you. We have homework, we have tests, but don't be afraid of them because they're not, a lot
I'm
of them are
totally scared.
difficult. They're just
I can't do that
difficult.
anymore.
Companions class, I teach about the companions, and we every week we try to imitate that companion with one quality or another. So maybe we make a little bit of extra dua or something. I mean, that's the kind of homework that we're talking about.
Oh, I
Now,
like
as
that homework.
levels, that's going to change. So as you grow and develop as a student, and if you decide to take the religious leadership track, yes, there will be certainly more serious testing and homework. But in those level 1 and some of the level 2 classes as well, it's really just very practical and life changing. How do I find happiness and joy in this world of my faith and my connection to my prophet, my connection to my prayer, etc.
Yeah. I did sign up for one class on Sunday with one of your instructors for Quran memorization. So I was like, okay, I can do this. Baby steps, not a semester yet, but I'm going to do baby steps, inshallah. That is the plan because, honestly, I think a lot of us, like you were talking about the suspicion of other women. And, I want to say and admit as a woman and as a feminist, as a self-proclaimed feminist, I my first go-to for dalil or proof is not a woman scholar, it's a male scholar. But I think a lot of it is training that we've had, cultural training to always ask a man, even when it comes to the issues of women. So why?
Mm.
Why aren't the superstar, rock star, celebrity imams of our culture in America women? We're starting to see a couple of them come up and repeatedly show up. Alhamdulillah, you're one of them and you decided to join us. So I really, really appreciate that. But what I want to remind our audience is the history of female scholarship in our deen and how the 4 schools of thought in Islam, the 4 major schools of thought, it was always a mother behind them. It was a woman who pushed those sons to pursue. And, it's kind of like, I don't expect a full history lesson between the 6th century and 16th centuries, what happened to the Muslim world. But if you could kind of speak to us about the role of mothers in early Islamic education and what kind of happened in our history to change that, and why now we always wonder, oh, well, why would I ask her? Why don't I ask Sheikh him and Sheikh the other him, instead of the her or the she?
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's two questions that are
Hmm.
put
Yes.
together. So, on one hand, the question of who are our mothers, who are the mothers, and how did the mothers influence some of our greatest scholars? And that's a really beautiful discussion that we could have, and we can talk about many of our early scholars. The two that came to mind when I was thinking about this question earlier were Imam Shafi'i and Abdul Qadir Jilani. Both were heavily influenced by their mothers and became who they became because of the mothers that they had. The other part of the question is what happened to the concept of Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, meaning that this term and the
Mhm.
word imam, they both come from the same root, which
I
means
love
to
that.
sit
I didn't
in
know that.
front of and to
Mm.
lead. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we are taught that the wives of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him,
So,
are our mothers, it's not some kind of Western Christian fluffy apron flat explanation of who they were. These are women that we are to take our religion from. These are women that we are to look to for their example of humanity, their example of living. Not we women, we Muslims are to take our examples
Mhm.
from. In Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to all of us, but speaks of the Prophet ﷺ as ula ala anfusihim, as the first priority of us, the believers. And after him, his wives. Allah, Allah. So what does that even mean? Like, we have to just pause at that concept for a long time and think about that. Who were these women? And then who are the inheritors of their work and where were they? They certainly existed historically. Sheikh Nadwi of Cambridge has done a lot of interesting work around where did they exist? How did they exist? Where were they? Who were they? And it's really interesting to read his work, which is in English in the book Al-Muhaddithat, and it is in Arabic in a 41-volume work that is still in publication. But that work or that research reminds us that the tradition of the concept of Ummahat al-Mu'mineen as leaders and builders of Islamic knowledge and builders of understanding of how we live has been here since day one. And it is our responsibility as women to make sure it continues and we build a legacy of that going forward. And certainly I believe we have forgotten that. Definitely, I think we've forgotten. I think that as a culture, we are still remembering the importance of the mothers of like Shafi'i, yes, the Shafi'i, it's not really what she would have been called, but Shafi'i's mother,
Yeah.
or mother of the
Hmm.
fathers, or all of the rest. But because we understand that role and we talk about it a lot, but we want to remember as well that we all have another role to consider and think about, which is to inherit the roles of the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen and to be at that place of scholarship and teaching and living in ihsan and taqwa that not only our own children can benefit, but also every human being we come in contact with and everyone that we might come in contact with, and that we should be even intentional about coming in contact with people that we wouldn't just naturally come in contact with the ilm and life that we are bringing forth.
I think what you're saying is resonating with people right now because Zeba, do you
Mhm.
want to read that question that just came in?
So we I know we just have another person that's saying, is there a program like Rabata, is it Rabata available for men and teenage boys? I'd love to find something like this that is more progressive and relatable for my boys and my husband who is a convert. That's actually a really great question.
So I can answer that. Our children's program, we are planning to open it up to boys. We don't do work with teenagers, or we have had a couple of teenage classes, one or two, but in general, that's not our focus. For me, as part of this concept that I talked about thinking how can we reach out, I am on the academic council and I do teach for TISA, the Islamic Seminary of America. One of the reasons I did that is because I get that question all the time
Mhm.
when I
Oh,
teach or share with men. And so I teach a class almost every semester. Not this semester, I'm not, because we're opening a Rabata Cultural Center here in Minnesota and moving
alhamdulillah.
from the model to a much larger, exciting third space model. And I mean, yes, we had the third space model, but this is more intense. So I'm not teaching this semester, but I am on the academic council and I am co-director with Dr. Jimmy Jones of the Culture for Ethical and Effective Organizational Development. So I stretched myself. I miss this incredible. She's my role model. How can you stretch yourself
I know.
as much as possible? So this is what I'm, I'm learning. I'm trying to learn her superhero quality. I'm not always good at it. Some days I snap back into tiny pieces, into the tiny self, but I'm trying.
Hmm. Zeba, did you want to ask your next question before I go? Because my
Yes.
list is long. I'm going to take up all
I
of Anse
know, I
Tamara's
know.
time. I'm like,
And I
I
actually
don't
just
know.
and I know, as like Uzma is definitely a fangirl, as am I, but I am definitely letting her have the mic a little bit more because she is like so excited that you're on the show today. Just probably like a centimeter more than I am. So that's one of the rangers. I'm like, Uzma, you just go ahead and ask all your questions because she is going to be with us today. But, specifically, we are a Mommyingwhilemuslim podcast. And one of the things that I always say is that we're raising that next generation of Muslim and Muslim Americans specifically. And so being educated in our own specific rights, I have 3 boys and a girl. And I focus more on my girl in the sense that I really want her to be educated and informed, know where she stands, because I don't want another male coming in and trying to tell her what her rights and her responsibilities are. I want her to be strong in her own self. And I have it as a juxtaposition because I do have 3 boys. And I'm like, because of that, I'm like, it's my daughter Zara, and I'm like, this is what I want you to focus on. So I definitely am going to be looking at some of the classes for her. She is a teenager, so we're in that tough period. But how do you personally feel, and I probably know the answer to this already, about education specifically for women and what their roles are, because we are raising that next generation, boys and girls. And what is the one takeaway that I think, like you gave us that piece in the beginning, like that we can tell either our daughters or our sons to focus on as the next generation of Muslim Americans?
Well, so our Rabatines program is brand new, and it's designed sort of to answer this question. The Rabatines program is not an Islamic studies program. That is our Rabata program. Rabatines are all mini masters, and it's just fun topics. I teach Hermione Granger and the boys who tried to hold her back. And if you don't know what that is,
sign up for that.
Love that.
I tried to sign up, but I'm too old.
And you're too old. And so that's one example of the kinds of classes we're teaching there. And I bring it up because outside of the teaching and fun interaction, one of my goals of that program is to open up this opportunity for young Muslim teenage girls to meet a number of powerful Muslim women adults. Maybe one of them is teaching how to crochet. Maybe another one is teaching how to sew your buttons on. Maybe someone else is teaching, how do I build my resume and my CV? Maybe somebody else. So there's a million different topics. It's really whatever someone's specialty is. My specialty is Harry Potter. Yes. I'm having so much fun with that because, how great is that? It's like I'm doing my duty by rereading the books. But my point is to your question, I think it's really important that our young people meet lots of women who are powerful and who are strong and who are connected and spiritual, and they have different kinds of lives, so that our children can understand the different possibilities that are open to us in this life, and still we can all be living very different lives and still living that very intentional life of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and walking on the straight path.
Absolutely. And, I was waiting for you to mention the Hermione Granger class because, like, I don't know if, Joe, you want to focus in on Anse Tamara's picture again, but, like, look right behind her. That stack of books right there. I was like, I'm going to say something. If she doesn't talk about Hermione Granger, the whole series is right behind her. I'm like, right where it should be, within arm's reach. Absolutely. So, a couple of things that I think it's really important to point out is some of the social circumstances in America in particular, I would say globally, but because again, we're Mommyingwhilemuslim, American Muslims are our focus, and moms in particular. What are some of the social circumstances that are necessitating the need for female scholars rather than male? Can you speak to a couple of those, however many that you're comfortable speaking about?
Well, I mean, oh my. Just how about waking up in the morning and breathing? But seriously, I think really that our social circumstances in America are not necessarily unique, as you said. but they are
Mhm.
unique in that we are a minority here. So
Mhm.
I'll take America as this concept of being a minority in a majority country. And so our Islamic centers, for example, were developed not just for a place to pray, but for us minority individuals to come together and have a social institution, a place where we feel like a majority. And that's a critical part of identity building. It's a critical part of growth. Now, if in that Islamic center, if in that space where we're supposed to feel we're a majority, we again feel marginalized or again feel as though we are not part of what this is all about, there's a great danger of us losing our faith, losing our identity. And so if our Islamic centers, our organizations, our third spaces don't have the opportunity, at the very least, the opportunity for women to find community, find teachers, find uh, one another, then we have not provided what is necessary for the smaller minority, which is Muslim women, to find a place for growth and find a place for spiritual rooting to take place. And unfortunately, one of the serious social circumstances in America is that our masjids are really in need of development and growth, especially in the area of welcoming and especially in the area of understanding the importance of women being part and parcel of the boards, of the leadership committee, of I believe every masjid, for example, and I believe this will happen. I believe we are starting on this path, but we're just barely starting, but I believe we will get there where every masjid in America will have a budget. Instead of spending millions of dollars on a space to pray that women don't even see, I'll talk about that in another podcast. Let's cover that budget and hire both an imam and a resident female scholar. And in that,
Yes.
every community will, and that's not because, oh, the women have to ask menstruation questions. Okay. This is in
Right.
order
Yes.
to be able to have the perspective. Dr. Jones talks a lot about this. His research is in both racism and sexism, I believe, across the board, but I think he does do a focus on Muslim community. And he talked about Dr. Ingrid Matson's book about the Quran. And he said, it's a scholarly book. It's a book that has the elements that a male or a female scholar would write. But her approach and where she starts her book with khansa, that's something I never would have thought of. Dr. Jones says about himself. So I never would have thought of doing that. And that's a kind of it's one example of the kinds of things we need to learn from women in community and learn about how to approach these topics sometimes and how to have a well-rounded understanding. I mean, if we look at the time of the Prophet, we are the only, or at least one of the very few, that our canon, if you will, if I can use that word, is based
Mhm.
in women's words. And if we're thinking about Aisha, anha, Hafsa, all of these ummahat and mu'mineen, and also some of the female companions who really taught us about how to think and about our religion. All of us, men and women, are learning from this. Well, in the same way, we need to continue in that vein.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Zeba, did you have another question before I
I
steal your
did.
thunder
I
again?
did. Not because I want to call out any particular organization, but there have been circumstances that I have heard where there are a group of male participants who do not want to be taught by a female scholar. How do you respond to that? And how do we get over the negativity that, for whatever reason, is kind of brought out because of that?
I mean, I'm not the mom who makes the kids sit at the table and finish the green beans they don't want to eat, you know? And I also don't put the green beans back in the fridge for tomorrow. That's just never the way I've been. I'm like, all right, you know, you don't want to eat the food I make? That's okay. You can make your own. I'm actually okay with them getting up and making their own food. Eventually, they'll figure out
Yes.
mine is better because it is. Mine is better.
Hmm.
And I think I take the same approach. Like, you don't want to learn from me, that's fine. I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot of people want to learn from me. I really don't have time for you if you don't want to learn from me. It's fine. And don't put me in the fridge and I'll come out later. Like, I'm okay. Go do your own.
I'll be okay.
Right, you know,
That's
like,
going to be the quote from this episode. I can
I
do
am
green
green
beans, but
beans.
don't put me back in the fridge. Keep me out. No, I
Anse
definitely
Tamara, I am
appreciate
green
that.
beans.
and I
I
will,
love green beans, so I'm good with
I do
Me
too.
too.
I do too. Yeah. I want to say
that.
Dr. Jones has been a really good advocate in this way. And one of the what he does, so what I do is just say that's fine, no problem. What Dr. Jones does, for example, is he continue even if I have 3 or 4 people who have signed up for my classes, whereas, for example, Asaf Aldi, who also teaches me at TISA, might have 30. He doesn't say you don't have enough. He says you're going to keep on
Mm,
teaching until they sign up for that class because it's a required class. So, I mean, that's one way that male allies can really promote female scholarship. They can make a class required, hire a woman to teach it, and then people can avoid it for a long time. But eventually, if it's a required class, they're going to learn from that woman. And, I find this really sad that we're even having this conversation because who goes to the
mhm,
university and doesn't have a class from a woman professor? Hello? I mean, really, does that happen in 2020 that someone
mhm.
goes to high school or to college or graduate school and none of their professors are women? I find that very difficult to believe. I know in some fields, maybe electrical engineering and things like this, that there are not many women in the field, but I still would be really surprised if there wasn't a course or two. So what's the deal?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't even, for me, it's just a green bean issue. Like, that's fine, no problem.
Yes.
Okay. You will not develop as a leader or as a scholar as well as your brothers who are learning from men and women alike. You will just not, so
Yes.
their green beans are going to be better. So that's okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's going to be my takeaway from today. Our green beans are going to be better than yours. I love
My
that.
green beans taste awesome. I don't know about y'all's, but my green beans are amazing.
Green beans.
Yeah, I love it. So, going back to the fangirling, and I don't love that word. I know you probably don't either. But, I know my mom is a fangirl of certain shuyukh, and they're all male. And so are we. I would say that, yes, I follow and I share a lot of their stuff. And I think a lot of the reason why I do it is because again, there's such a dearth of well-known Muslim American female scholars, but do you have a particular favorite? And what can we, as the fangirls, non-scholars, who obviously have the responsibility you've explained to attain knowledge, how can we help promote those American female scholars? So again, I like two-part questions. I'm sorry.
So I'm going to answer the second part. Oh, the first, I guess
Okay.
I am answering the part first, which is who are
Hmm.
some women that I'm fans of, right? Isn't that yeah.
Hmm. Yes, that's the
Yes.
first part.
I'm a real fan of Dr. Zainab Alwani's work and her person as well, mashallah, mashallah. But she has incredible work out there. If you really listen to her YouTube videos and you really look at what she's written, and the work that she's doing, she has a strong theory of Quranic epistemology that is really important for us to learn and understand. So I definitely would encourage everyone, if you were sitting telling yourself, I'm going to watch a YouTube video, pick one of Dr. Zainab Alwani's YouTube videos about Quran, about the Quran, or really about anything, because she brings, what I've noticed about her talks is that she really brings her epistemology into almost everything she talks about. And I really want her to write a book about that. She also wrote an incredible article about this topic for the journal of, oh my goodness, I'm not going to remember what it's called. The journal of something. I'll get it for you. But anyway, look her up and I'm sure it'll come up on Google. And so she's wonderful. Another woman that I really am a fan of and I follow is Dr. Jamila Karim. And with her, I really I'm so fascinated by her recent studies in the concept of radical love. And she's writing a book about that. And I enjoy talking to her and I enjoy listening to her talk about these concepts. I think that she is a step ahead of most people in really understanding that we as a society have forgotten what love is. And so she's using this term radical love, which also Omid Safi uses from Duke University, I think. And he has a book out called Radical Love. And I don't know if she got it from him or if they share it, but that's a really very interesting woman to follow and learn from. Of course, Dr. Ingrid Matson. But I want to say the why, because I don't know that everyone would know the why. I think that I happen to know that she is a fan of Umar al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu. Probably I shouldn't use that word because it's much deeper and much more respectful than that, and much more
Yes.
scholarly. But I see in her life, in the work that she does, in her Hurma project, for example, in the way she interacts with people, a real reflection of that uh, attachment or respect for Umar ibn al-Khattab. I worked with her on a couple of different things, and I teach her book, The Story of the Quran, and she's just got a lot to teach us as well. She has a lot to teach us no matter what, but in this
Right.
thinking of justice and and for example, the Hurma project and just how she's framed that and the work she's doing there, these are all really important things that we have to learn from her. Of course, there are many more, but those are three that have been. I mean, we also have, there are
Right. There's
others,
a
and
lot.
yeah, and we have teachers at Ribat. I didn't mention the teachers at Ribat because I wanted to talk about those. We've asked them. Many of them are busy, but Zainab Alwani, inshallah, will be joining us in the spring for
Oh,
one class.
alhamdulillah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. And we do definitely hope that Dr. Matson and Dr. Karim at one point will be able to join us as well. No pressure out in the world, public world.
We're putting it out there into the
Exactly.
universe.
Yeah.
And the second part of the question was, what can we do better to promote like women like them, the faculty that you have at Rabata?
You know, the way when we talk about promotion, we always think about digital promotion right now.
Yeah.
And I think that what I've sort of learned is that if we just talk about people, not in the way we usually do,
Yes.
yeah,
The nice way.
I think if we are having tea or we're at someone's house, we're having a Zoom, no more tea, COVID. We're having a Zoom call with somebody and people are bringing up different people. Just bring them up and talk about their work. Make yourself educated about the work that they do. Yeah, these are some of our teachers, my very good friends. These are women who are really making life changes in their lives and also in the lives of the people around them. And if you take a class with one of them, that is going to change how you enter. Oh, Zainab Ansari, yes, I was going to talk. All of these women can be mentioned. MashaAllah, I'm getting excited looking at that page. But also, just the idea of talk about the women you've learned from. If you read an article by a woman, talk about that article. Talk about her. And talk about it to others. Talk about her to others, because that is going to make sure that people start to get curious about the women that you're learning from, about the other women out there. I mean, look at this list. These are
That's my cousin.
Oh, mashallah. That's great.
Mariam.
Like, this is an incredible list of women. And Mariam, she's Hafiza, she's a Ijaza, also Dr. Sadia, who wrote the Venture. These are very accomplished women, all of them, that we don't know a lot about. We have to stop deciding that a woman is valuable for what she will teach us based on how many follows or likes or digital spaces that they sort of own.
Yes.
Some people enjoy that and are good at that. Others don't enjoy that, don't want to be part of that world. That's okay. And we just have to value our teachers for what they can bring to us and what they can teach us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great look at our page. I love it. And I'm making mental notes, getting back to my website, folks, about missing some.
We have to add some
Women are always, how can I make it better? How can I make it better?
Well, speaking of talking about somebody and saying, promotion, this is the book that I definitely am liking this time, and get it from Daybreak Press. That's where to actually get it from. And a couple of announcements. Yeah, Daybreak Press, and a couple of announcements. It's registration for the Rabata Academic Institute is actually still going on. And the first day of fall semester classes is this Monday. So if anybody that's listening to this today is interested, it's not too late. And maybe this is God's divine intervention that we have her coming on the show today with it starting on Monday. And Rabata proudly presents classes for teenage girls, 13 to 17, the Rabateens. I'm going to have to look that up for my teenager. Also began this week, but check out rabateens.rabata.org for more information. We're going to have that up on our show notes. And the registration for the Dragonflies, I love that name. Our youth program for ages 7 to 12 opens on September 21st. Keep an eye out for the Dragonflies. Now, I'm not going to be able to see a dragonfly without thinking about you. So I love that.
Yes.
In the upcoming days for more information. So I hope
We'll
everybody
post those
checks you
links up
guys
in the
out.
comments. Yeah. We'll get those
Yes.
up to you guys so you
I
guys can
a
get
really
registered.
significant, sorry, I don't mean to talk over you. Dragonflies are really significant symbolic creatures. I don't know if you're a fan. I'm a big fan
Ooh.
of dragonflies.
They're
I
beautiful.
love,
I love them.
yeah, but they mean like it depends on which culture you look at, but they have all sorts of different, very significant meaning. I won't. You guys can look it up. It's super fun.
Yeah, we'll look it
I
up.
love
No,
them.
now you've got me
Look it up right
curious because
now.
all I know is they
I
annoy me when we're
know.
in the pool because they dive right into the,
No,
like they're
I get so
about to hit the
excited
water and
when
then they
I
go up.
see
It's like, and
them.
my kids run
It's about
screaming because they
emotion,
don't know.
understanding the deeper meaning of life. It's about water
Mhm.
and the importance of water. I mean, it's lots of cool stuff. You'll look them up and you'll have
It,
fun
it
with it.
symbolizes
Absolutely.
change and transformation, adaptability, self realization. And the change is often referred to as a source of mental and emotional maturity and understanding for a deeper meaning of life. So,
Yes,
that, I mean, you're pushing those dragonflies away, and I'm telling you, they're trying to teach you something, Uzma. So,
They're trying
stop
to teach me. I know. I need to learn.
fighting
I need to learn
those
more.
dragonflies. They're there to remind you for further information.
Yeah.
yes.
So for
There are
further information,
sorry, that's why our
say
children's
that again,
program.
Anse.
That's why our children's program is called Dragonflies
I
because
love it.
we're growing children. Like it's not just to open your brain, let me stuff information in. It's about
Hmm.
ethical and character building, ethic and character building.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
That's
all of
amazing.
That's our biggest contribution to them, I feel like, and what you've contributed us to us today, like, just I feel like your manners and your aura, like I don't know if I'm on a high from getting good news this morning, but I'm feeling even more elevated if that was possible.
Alhamdulillah. I
So
love it.
alhamdulillah, I feel really good and hyped, like I can do stuff. Because again,
Mhm.
it's very empowering to hear that the most sacred knowledge that we have in our lives, is like we're the vessels of it. And we need to reassume that responsibility. And we are 110, if not 1,000% capable. I'm obviously not good at math, but we're completely capable of doing this and passing it on, just like you beautifully have from your teachers back in Syria. So we really appreciate you sharing that with us. Do you have any final thoughts before you close today?
Well, thank you for having this podcast. What a great opportunity for women to think about mommying while Muslim. It's the process or the job of being a mom is very influenced by Western thinking, Christian thinking, television and media of the 50s, or actually the 80s and 90s that taught us that, oh, the only way to be a mom is to be June Cleaver and things like
Mhm.
that. I think it's so important to have conversations like this because every woman will be different. And one of the hardest things about being a mom, I think, is when you feel like you're not being a good mom. And
Mhm.
that's so painful. And that you asked me, how did you plan? I'm like, I tried every day to like, and I mean, and it's okay. Like you're going to be the mom. We're all doing our best. I really believe that everyone wakes up in the morning and tries to be the best mom that they can be, but we need help. And so momming while Muslim means that we can reach into our deep, at least to me, it means that we can reach into our deep sense of importance of faith and attach that to this very important life mission of mommying. And in our communities, those who are not moms, biological moms, we need them to be community moms. And we need
Mhm.
all of us women to come together and mommy while Muslim, our institutions, our children, everybody. So thank you for having me on, and I appreciate the effort that you're going through to make this happen for people.
Inshallah.
Jazakallah
Thank
khair for
you.
joining us. This was fabulous. I learned so much. And, I'm going to post even in the comments all those scholars that you talked about so that we can go look them up. Because I was doing it while you were talking. It's like, look them up really
Yes.
fast. And we'll put those up in our comments in our show notes. And I'm just really excited. Jazakallah khair for coming. I look forward to seeing or hearing more of you at Rabata when I sign up, inshallah.
Yay.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. Until next time,
All
everybody.
right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.